The Gee and Ursula Show. Good morning, Ann.
Hello to you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So you just heard Hannah's report about the situation at the courthouse. The frustration. The last hour we talked about the couple that went into the homeless camp in Seattle, where they went to retrieve their stolen items and then ended up driving over someone and killing them as they left after they were getting attacked. You, as a Seattle city attorney, what would you be doing differently to address this revolving door of the criminal justice system, where so many of us are so frustrated about how criminals keep getting back out on the streets?
I am sick to my stomach having to hear what we've just heard about, that workers have to come and protest about the conditions at their workplace to be safe. We have allowed, under Holmes's approach for the past 12 years, to have a reputation to invite crime to come here and clearly settle in. And we need to change that because it is affecting everybody, sheltered and unsheltered. It really is. And we need to center victims once again in that process. And that is what has been missing and is clearly now the manifestation of that over this 12-year culmination has brought us to this serious point. And I stated the same as they do. I could walk to that courthouse in 2008 and go in that Third Avenue side and didn't really think much of it because it was relatively safe. In 2010, I could also do that. When my second child was born in 2011, it was a little starting to get something. Now we are that. We are, jurors and employees are told don't even go in that door, and now look at what we're having to do. The workers are having to protest for safety. It clearly is not working. We must address crimes at that level, at that misdemeanor level, because otherwise it invites increasing in severity and frequency, and then we have people who cannot simply do their job in the administration of justice for other victims of even more serious crimes. This is absolutely abominable that we are having to have this conversation.
Hey, Ann, you mentioned that in 2008 you walked in there, no problem. 2010 you walked in and no problem. Can you give us an example? Tell us a story in which you started to walk in and you said to yourself, whoa, things are changes. Help us better understand that.
Well, you just started to notice a decline of care for people, and so maybe when I'm walking and I feel more vulnerable because I'm maybe in dress shoes, in a suit, maybe I would cross a street or something because I know I'm not capable to maybe take care of myself better than in other situations. I'm not fearful of people. I regularly go into encampments to do outreach. I was at one actually last night till quite late. So I am a athlete, so I know how to protect, and I do jujitsu, so I know how to protect myself. So it's not like I'm vulnerable and fearful. But what I'm saying is it is clearly shown that we see the deterioration of the standard of care, basically, is what I'm going to call it now within our city, where the standard of care of public safety has gone down to where it is it's immeasurable, that we have no standard of care for public safety. It is completely broken, and we have to retrieve it because there is no other way but this seek correction to start to fix what we call the grouping together that creates public safety for all of us, because it's cross-jurisdiction, it is cross-agency, and that's not happening. We have no collaboration, as you're just talking about, city versus county, who's doing it, everyone hands off. It is time to get to work and make sure that we have people going to work safely. That is the job of our leaders. I'm sorry, I'm getting really riled up. I am so upset that we are having to do this.
You mentioned standard of care for public safety. I want to talk about that. What's happening right now? Is it politics that makes it seem as if that's not being addressed? Or is it that there are people that just really don't care? Can you help us? What do you see in that situation?
I do think it's politics. I think it's language and vernacular of the day. And what I've been here for 25 years, and I'm certainly not saying, we need to go back to some good old days type of thing. But we absolutely need to be talking about improvement and being productive and moving forward. But when things were managed and I didn't even think about local politics when I moved here because things were managed. We could take care of the most vulnerable. We could manage public health and public safety. And now we do need to come to terms to reconcile the fact that we are failing to meet the needs of the most vulnerable, in addition to not being able to perform the basic functions of public health and safety. We are failing everyone at every count. And so that standard of care is just not there. And I think it's because people that we've elected into office are tied up on concepts and vocabulary buzzwords other than practical policies that affect all of us in our daily lives of trying to get through life, whether it's get to work, run your business, raise your kids, be a single person trying to get across town. I mean, it's everyone, and it's at all sectors of society because it impacts us all. We have got to do different, and the politics needs to be just put to the side. This is about the practical aspects of daily life here in Seattle only.
So I want to talk about a ruling in 2019. The Ninth Circuit Court decided in Martin versus Boise that homeless people cannot be punished for sleeping in public if there is no alternative housing. And the Supreme Court declined to review the decision. So that case basically set precedent for local governments, and we talk about this, to seemingly throw up their hands and say there's nothing that we can do. So as Seattle City Attorney, first of all, how would you interpret that ruling? Would you do it differently, if at all?
I think that ruling it does have consequences for us. It does have impact. I think it's been construed in a way that is not quite the way that it was intended. It is to make sure that we are not criminalizing, and it was not to create cruel and unusual punishment for someone who has no alternative but to sleep outside. Because that is that is absolutely true. It's cruel and unusual punishment to say, oh, you don't have a place to put your head at night, so therefore we're going to put you in jail. That should not be the case. But it also doesn't say that we have to have aren't allowed to protect our public spaces. It doesn't have that in there. And so I think that it's important to understand that there is a way to do it with compassion and safety. And it doesn't have to be just a blanket response. And I think that that's what we have seen here, where we don't have people of courage willing to have the conversation of, we can care for people and we can protect our public spaces. We can have it both ways. We can do all of it if we manage and we have dialogue. And right now we just have arm's length and vernacular, and we don't have action. And it has been for years, right? We've been on this declared state of emergency since 2015 at the city and county level. I participated in that King County point-in-time count in the middle of the night of January 2020. When we came to that 11,751, which is our number we have for those unsheltered in the county, I know how we got there. It's just basically we look at the tent, we guess how many people might be able to fit in there, and that's the number we recorded. That's the number we have. That's the number we start with. But we have to make sure that we are addressing that, appropriately. This seat is not the source of where we address all of those needs. Right. This seat is to take care of the societal limits so we can make sure that they're safe and that everyone else is safe. And then once we have that and we bring down the fear level, because we as humans will not be making rational choices when we're in fear, whether it's, should be justified or not justified according to an outside perspective, right? Everyone is allowed to have their own sense of safety or fear. No one else can measure it for them. But once we bring that down, we can make better decisions as humans in interacting with one another. And then the rest of society can function and take care of the needs of the most vulnerable, because we're failing to do so.
And I want to ask, because you mentioned, at the seat that you would be, if you were to win, you would not be dealing with some of this, but what would you do that would be within your purview? What would be your number one priority if you were to win?
I think, again, we have to center victims, and victims of crime are sheltered and unsheltered. I'm in the process of trying to help a young man, and I pardon if I get choked up and I start to cry when I speak of him, because he's literally starving to death. And he's been assaulted and has a head wound, and we can't get him in. And he's now assaulted his partner, and so it's domestic violence because they are on all kinds of substance, and just out there and inches away from Aurora. At any moment could pass out and be dead and cause an accident and all of that. This is grave concerns. We have got to make sure we are taking action. So the laws on the books are there. They are there to tell us what we as a society reflect our values. And we need to use those. We need to use them to provide protections for everyone. And that's really the starting place. Centering victims, whether they're sheltered or unsheltered, is the first and foremost thing we need to return that system to. That seat needs to be a place of legal advice to those who are elected to create policy, which it is failing to do on the civil side as well, which we've seen the whole debacle with the texts and then the lawsuit to the press, on and on and on, and now it's been dropped. It is mismanagement, top to bottom, doubled the budget, less work, more crime, low prosecution. It is fail, fail, fail. And I have got to get in there. We have got to have better leadership there.
This is the voice of Ann Davison. She is candidate for Seattle City Attorney, and she joins the Gee Ursula Show. And one of our last questions for you is this. First of all, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't get to vote in Seattle, but if I did, I'd vote for you. Now, that's one. Two, here's my next thing I want to say. I feel like we ask you about it's just his politics. I don't care that you're a Republican. And as a matter of fact, most of the time, I don't care. Like me personally, this is me. I don't care about Republican or Democrat, what's the R or the D next to their name. I just care about the candidate. So my question for you is this. If and when you were to get into office, how do you battle and fight with that? And how are you going to be able to do what this city needs to fight through all of the who's got the R and who's got the D next to their name?
I so appreciate this question because, I've never been a Trump supporter. The only kind of Republican I want to be likened to is Dan Evans, who is a longtime Seattle resident and our three-time governor, who welcomed Vietnamese refugees here when the Democratic governor of California wouldn't let them in. That is what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter. It is about social issues. And what is societal cues telling us is the solution that we need to address for society's issues. And right now, what society is screaming at us here locally is crime is increasing. Social spending is increasing. Prosecution is decreasing. So that tells us that the money is not the answer, or it's not an inappropriate programs where there's measurable outcomes to get to the interventions that we want to have for people. And it tells us that there still does need to be an increase in prosecution for that because it is not working for some who are resistant to those alternatives. So it isn't about political party at all. It is about what does society tell us is needed. And then you be fluid with your approach. And right now, that is the approach that's necessary because we've become so imbalanced for the past 12 years of having this place where no one speaks for victims. And so that is nothing to do with politics. It is completely people and issues and the practical life of day-to-day here locally in Seattle.
Ann Davison, candidate for Seattle City Attorney. Ann, we wish you all the best of luck going forward.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure talking to you, and I will see you, everyone, at that rally tomorrow. I'm making sure my calendar is cleared so I can participate.
Thank you, Ann. We hope to have you on the show again soon. Appreciate you. Okay, still.